Jai Baba. Welcome to this important seminar. Over the next couple of days, Ward's going to be presenting his new unified field theory that integrates Sri Meher Baba 1.0 from the 1920s with the later Avatar Meher Baba 2.0 of the 1950s. And this really is an important seminar because it addresses one of the fundamental unanswered questions raised by books like Infinite Intelligence and Creation and Its Causes, namely, how do we integrate the differences between in terminology and content between those books and Baba's later masterpiece, God Speaks? They're so different. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Ward maneuvers us through this material. And so please join me in welcoming our dear friend, Ward Parks. Are winning.
I have a few housekeeping things. First of all, welcome everybody, and reminding you that the sessions are 10 to 12 and 2 to 4. Lunches, you can go all around this area. There are restaurants. Let's see, refreshments are over there, including chai and coffee and tea water. The bathrooms, one is at this end, just around the first corner. The other one is just at the other side of the main lobby. So there are 2 restrooms there. Okay, and I'm sure we'll all have a good time just straightening things out at the end of the day, getting ready for tomorrow. So, in the meantime, oh yeah, well, you better try hard. Okay, so ready for you, Wardy. Okay. Thank you, Winnie, for getting us this place.
Yeah, no, I did want to thank Winnie and Deerfield. This is a fabulous. The microphone. Do I hold it? It's like that? Okay. A fabulous venue, and also thanks to Chris and Paula and others who helped to organize it, and Cassandra Bramucci, who a lot of you won't know, who did a lot to organize this whole series of programs this year. So Jai Baba to all of you. The topic, as you probably know, is an integrated Darshana. I'm starting to use that word, which I'll turn to in a moment. And as Chris said, at least in the work that I do, which is, with working with Baba's words and the editing of texts and the study of them, I feel, at least for myself, that a turning point has been reached. In that, especially with I don't even have a copy. Does anybody have a copy of Creationist Causes? Yeah, there we have it. With the publication of Creationist Causes last year, I feel that we have a more or less complete picture, unless the book is found. Then, of course, that will be a atom bomb going off. But apart from that, and I know a lot of what there is still to be published. I'm working actively, and others are on these things, and they will be very important. But I think fundamentally we have a complete picture of Baba's message, as much as we're going to get. The importance of it is impossible really to overstate. I mean, if you think about the Buddhist sutras or the Christian Gospels or the Quran and the Hadith of Muhammad, look at how much that has affected the civilizations that descended from them. I mean, the Christian Gospels, they were, composed around the first, 60, Bam would know better, to 110 AD, something like that, when there was a tiny, insignificant community in what's now Israel, under the Roman thumb, with the glorious Roman Empire, Julius Caesar, Augustus, all that. They seemed utterly insignificant. Rome has been gone for 1,500 years, and yet Christianity is still with us. And you could say that with, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of these things that seem so inconsequential outlive mighty civilizations by far. And I feel in me this absolute certainty that is going to happen with Meher Baba also. Of course, we have, Meher Baba is the living man, the one within our hearts, all of that. I'm not going to be talking on those broader subjects, but just on I'm using the word Darshana for this, by which I mean to say, we don't have a good word in English, that's why I'm using it in this way. Philosophy, but it's much more than a philosophy. It's a complete view of God, creation, and it's also the understanding of the path to God that he gave us. What Meher Baba has given to us is going to be universal, accepted by everyone. And in the future, we will have people living it. Its depths will be sounded much more than we are able to do now. That's part of the avataric work. The first generations knew the avatar himself. That was their blessing. But part of the avatar's blessings to the posterity is that new aspects and depths to him unfold as time goes on. And that will surely happen with Meher Baba too. So what this program is trying to do is to make, my own way anyway, an attempt to get a integrated picture of Meher Baba's Darshana, bringing together, as Chris said, particularly the kind of classic Darshana, classic philosophy and teachings from especially the 1950s, also the discourses too, which were a decade earlier, which is what most of us grew up knowing, or that most of the world knows, with some of this material from earlier, which really is important. I felt that when I was working on the editing of it, and I certainly feel so now. So this will be very rudimentary. This is a condensation of a 9-day program at Marana later this year, and then there'll be a 6-day version of it at the Heartland Center in October. So all that it will be possible to do here will be to touch upon certain highlights and certain major themes. It won't be possible to delve into them. And I also hope, I think it would be much better if you guys really feel free to speak up and chime in and interact, Not everyone is a textual editor. I don't know why not, but there are some people who aren't. And not everybody spends all their time thinking about high philosophy and topics like that. So at a certain point, your eyes should go out of focus and start to fade out of things. So I think we won't be able to go into depth, but to touch on big things. And if you don't understand it, or if you want to say something about it, it would be better for you to speak up, because that will make it more real for everybody. We can't possibly delve into the depths of everything. Okay, so don't feel shy. I know that Alora's going to be asking questions right and left, and Asha too. Okay? Here is, let's get the man on here. This is a 1920s Meher Baba, And here's the 1950s Meher Baba, the two periods we're talking about. By the way, I always like this quote. This is from the great Al-Ghazali, one of the towering figures of Islam. He died in a very nice year, 1111. So it's, yeah. But this is from The Alchemy of Happiness. He was quite a genius, and he was a very great Sufi. But this will be to the comfort and consolation, perhaps, of some of you. The farthest limit achieved by human reason through the principles of the illumination of his sublimity is bewilderment. So, if you find yourself utterly bewildered, Al-Ghazali would say, man, you're there, you're getting there. Here's, I'm starting to use this word darshana, and I hope that it will be okay with you. I got vigorous resistance from somebody in India saying you can't use the word that way. But I want to, first of all, say this is a meaning that the word has. I didn't impute it to it. It's the very same word as darshan. It's just in English, darshan and darshana sound different. Whereas in the Sanskrit and derived languages, darshana, there's a final A. So it's the very same word. But darshan and darshana has two basic meanings in the Indic languages. One is to have a meeting or have the sight, literally, of a great saint or master, or also it gets applied to the tombs, the samadhis of saints and masters. So we all know that. I had Meher Baba's darshan in 1962 at the East-West Gathering, or I took Baba's darshan at the samadhi this morning. That's common usage among us all. But there is another meaning which it has, and which I'm activating if it gets accepted by the Baba community. And that is something like, we use the word philosophy or philosophy in teachings, but really the word I write about this all the time, and the word philosophy sticks in my craw. It's just, there are a number of cases where Baba really didn't like it. It's whatever it was at the beginning. It's philos or phileo, which means love, nice word, and sophos or sophia, which means wisdom. Okay, nice, love of wisdom, but it has stopped meaning that long ago. It's a purely intellectual pursuit based on a prior tradition, and often it's very dry, and it's excluded God and faith and revelation from its purview. So I just can't swallow the word anymore. And some of the other words, like cosmology, Meher Baba's cosmology. Okay, he has a cosmology, that's true, but what about God, who's beyond the cosmos, right? Metaphysics and ontology. Well, I'm sure all of you would just love if we have a session on ontology, right? But that just concerns with what really exists. Well, what about everything else? What about the creation? What about the path to God? Explanations, Meher Baba's explanations. Well, he gave explanations on every kind of thing, about what to do at this darshan program, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel we really do need a better word. Darshan means some darsh, which in Sanskrit means a seeing. And here's an essential aspect of Meher Baba's darshana. It's not created on a foundation of intellectual understanding at all. It is, we have an English word, revelation, which, bam, I'm sure you're acquainted with these topics. That is to say, this is truth revealed to us by someone who knows. It's knowledge with a capital K. And those who know, in that sense, have to express some version of that knowledge in a way that is suited to the time and place. You can never explain truth in human languages. Your mind has to go completely, and then you find it out. The avatars at different times will give different darshanas as the time and place and their work requires. So that's one feature of the word. Darshana is a much better word for encompassing that revelation aspect of what he gives. Another important dimension is that, like Meher Baba's Darshana, it's not just an understanding, it does encompass that. God, creation, and many other topics. But it's for use in the ascent and approach to God. It's actually, there's a path associated with it. That's not true of philosophy. You can have any kind of philosophy and then go out and live like a shit. It happens all the time. But Meher Baba's Darshana is predicated on the goal, which is to become one with God in the end. So that's why I'm using this word Darshana, because I think it's just much more better for us. Hope you guys accept it. I was recommending to Winnie, but she didn't follow through on it, that she had baskets of fruits and tomatoes and eggs, and if you really dissent with some point, you can say it with a tomato, you know. So go ahead and, as I say, feel free to speak up and chime in. I'd like to actually read some of this, description of this. Did all of you get this? This is, yes. Okay. Okay. It's a little bit small, I know, but I'm going to read it out anyway. Maybe this version would be more expandable. Let's try this and see if this is better, more readable. A little better? Okay. With the publication of Creation and Its Causes in August 2022, we now have available for our reading and study in published form the complete body of Meher Baba's major discourse content from the early Mehrabad period in the 1920s, with the exception of the book, whose whereabouts remain unknown. Despite this one huge hiatus, we can still say that the combination of In God's Hand, 1925, Infinite Intelligence, 1926, these are the years in which these were probably composed by Meher Baba, Tiffin Lectures, 1927, and Creation and Its Causes, 1927 to 28, provides us with a comprehensive account of what we could call the Avatar's early Mehrabad dispensation. The first early Mehrabad period was 1925 to 1929, where Baba was basically had his headquarters there. How does this extraordinary body of content integrate with Meher Baba's classic philosophy and teachings of later decades? In particular, what is the relation between this early material and God Speaks, widely held to be Meher Baba's metaphysical masterpiece? And it is held by me to be that too. I'm not challenging that at all. Certain fundamental themes characteristic of Avatar Meher Baba's message to the modern world are common to all his discourse, from the earliest to the latest. His metaphysics, you know what metaphysics is? It's the branch of philosophy concerned with what exists. You could say ontology is similar. What is real? What really exists? Metaphysics could be summarized in the four-word sentence, God alone is real. If anyone wants, what is Meher Baba's metaphysics? Those 4 words essentialize it, I would say. God is everything, and the created world is a manifestation of the nothing. The path to the realization of this great truth is accomplished through the long journey of the soul. Meher Baba gave to this narrative the name, the divine theme. It represents one of his greatest contributions to humanity's understanding of spiritual truth. You know, creation, evolution of consciousness, reincarnation in human form, involution, realization. That narrative is the divine theme. Another central teaching concerns the causes of human bondage in sanskaras and karma. It is this that ties us to the cycle of reincarnation. Our escape from this enslavement lies in the path to God and the ascent through the planes of higher consciousness. There are several great paths or yogas, yet the most important of these is the path of love. And the highest manifestation of such love lies in the relation between the seeker and the master, the lover and the beloved, who presents himself to our eyes as the perfect master and avatar. These things were common to Meher Baba's teachings, his Darshana, throughout. Never changed at all. Yeah.
The word love is so emotionally charged and
Yeah.
has such different meanings to every single individual. And I've been thinking about that the
Yeah.
other day. What other word? What other? I mean, because the word love is just all over the place.
I know. I've always been interested that, like another charged word in many ways is God. And I was always interested that Meher Baba did not abandon those words. Especially love can mean any kind of horrible thing even, you know. And but Baba kept it and kept it in its highest meaning.
I mean, would it apply to use the phrase divine?
Yeah.
I mean, that would absolutely be.
Yeah. You know, he did have different discourses where he would talk about the different levels of love. Actually, we'll get to this later on, but even crude desire is love. You know, every sanskara has, we may get to this or not, but I think it's the whim of God is at the root, is that who am I is, are you my real self? And that's at the root of every sanskara, but it has to get purified. So the highest desire is manifested in someone like Mara, you know, where it's really practically divine love, or might even be that. No, that's a good question. The fourth of these sessions will look at the path to God, and we have far more to cover than we possibly can. So this will be sort of like, let's go see the Himalayas, and we'll jump from mountain peak to mountain peak. That's what we're doing here over these few days. Yeah. Let's see, where did I get to? Yeah. All of these foundational things in Meher Baba's discoursing through the nearly feature in the nearly 5 decades of his avatar career. Yet his discourse in the 1920s brings into view perspectives that may seem strange and unfamiliar to close students of God Speaks and Discourses. I mean, Discourses is a really major body of material also. I'm not disparaging any of Baba's other books, of course. One such theme is the dichotomy of thinking and the imagination. Have any of you tried to read Infinite Intelligence? Yeah. You know, there are other twisted and perverted people like me who really have developed an appetite for it. So I can really say it's possible. It really is. It can become very intoxicating. You have to become a strange creature, but if you're ready to become a strange creature. So thinking the imagination is a huge idea in Infinite Intelligence. This afternoon I'm going to be talking about Meher Baba's metaphysics, you could say. And I feel that this is really essential, the thinking, the imagination, and the only place where Baba expressed that theme was in Infinite Intelligence. If they had lost that manuscript, man, what a loss to humanity it would have been. Could never have been guessed at from Meher Baba's later writings. In God's Hand provides us with what we could call an illuminationist philosophy. The Sufi term is Ishraqi, illuminationism, where the fundamental categories are light and darkness. There's a big strain of that in Meher Baba's Darshana from early to late. Throughout this early literature, we are introduced to another major dichotomy, Pran and Akash. Have any of you butted your horns with Pran and Akash yet? It turns out to be big. You would never have known that from God Speaks. And there's a reason for that, which we'll get into. Energy and space, which play an enormous role in the creation and constitution of the imaginary world that we see around us. Creation and its causes also gives us a developed account of the asmans, or skies. Again, you won't find this in Discourses or God Speaks. You hear about the planes. But there are these adjuncts, like if the first plane has as adjunct the first asman. And there's all sorts of stuff there. Yeah.
Is that a Sufi concept, Osman?
It's a word in Hindi, and I think it comes from Urdu and stuff. I tried to do some basic research into whether these understandings Baba gives, especially in creationist causes, that's the place for this, can be found in anywhere in Sufism. I even emailed Carl Ernst about it, and he said, I know he wasn't acquainted with anything. So there are vast fields of research in the future for people with these interests. There really is. What could be connected with this. But, it turns out Baba never used this distinction later, hardly at all. But I suspect that the musts are advanced souls caught in the asmans. It sounds like that to me. Baba didn't say so in the Wayfarers because he wasn't using that language then, but so this is my guess. So that's a big one, which function as a kind of adjunct to the 7 planes of consciousness and embroil many spiritual seekers and adepts in the visionary and fantastic inner domains. But as a very first subject preliminary to all of this, I would like to begin with the topic of Meher Baba's words. In the community of Meher Baba's lovers, we have arrived at a stage where we need to ask which books, which compilations of Meher Baba's words should we regard as authentic. I would like to submit some standards which ought to be applied when claims are made in this connection. In particular, you see, this is my very work. So I've decided this year I'm going to start every program with this because, the community of Baba's lovers really needs to be aware of this and have a voice in this whole discussion. So it's not just something imposed from on high. If its sources are, in particular, no text claiming to present Meher Baba's words ought to be accepted as authentic if its sources are not specified. Authentic editions of Meher Baba's words need to be offered to the public in the form of critical editions. I wish we had a better phrase for this. It's not a nice phrase at all. But this is the standard language used in this kind of work. The standards applicable to this are matters of concern to all Baba lovers and ought to be transparently put forth to one and all. So I'll be coming to that topic first. But let's look at what these 4 sessions are on. So this one, the first topic on Meher Baba's words, what standards apply in determining authenticity in assessing what purports to be a text of Meher Baba's words? And then the next topic, beads on a string, that message Baba gave in London in 1932. Meher Baba's Darshana in the world's great spiritual traditions. So this is just a glimpse. Every topic here, as you could see, is the subject of enormous inquiry, needless to say. But, I feel that in our Baba world, we've been, for the time being, exempted from real challenge by people from other philosophies and other faiths, by the fact that Baba's kept himself under the radar. So a lot of questions never get asked. Baba has wanted us to be protected for the time being, but that won't last forever. and people will start to ask really basic questions like, how can Meher Baba say that Muhammad was God incarnate? That's absolute blasphemy, incarnationism within Islam. So what are we going to say? You know, now not everybody is going to be engaging in these things, but I do think it's time for, anyway, for my own part, to start bringing up some of these topics a little bit. Anyway, yeah, Susan.
More than just remind of how Don Stevens mentioned these other things. Don Stevens really emphasized the importance of giving Baba's words as they were said.
Totally, yeah.
But it's really tricky because people took dictation down, Baba did this and gestured.
I know it's a very deep and complex topic. We'll be going into this a little more. And I personally feel Baba had great purposes in doing this, and it's part of the work of his silence, actually. But we'll get into this more. So some of the, Meher Baba, Vedanta, and the Vaishnava tradition. Do you know the word Vaishnava? It's devotion to Vishnu. And it's out of the Vaishnava tradition that we get the word avatar, which Baba chose as his term for himself. Primordial metaphysics and the idea of the avatar. For primordial metaphysics, I feel that Meher Baba's Darshana, all things considered, is closer to Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, than anything else. Meher Baba and Sufism, illuminations on the spiritual path. I feel that one of the great contributions that Sufism has had, and when the time comes that people take an interest in these things, could have to our Baba world, is they have a whole language about this path to God. It's wonderful. And it would be very like sobriety versus drunkenness, you know, the path of sobriety, or expansion versus contraction. You know, can you imagine? That's really an interesting subject, actually. And there are magnificent discussions of this, where both of those have a legitimate place. You would think expansion is good and contraction is bad. No, actually both have a place. And Sufism has really explored this more than other traditions that I'm acquainted with. Meher Baba and mystical Christianity, Christ, love, and the role of suffering. The theme of love, it seems to me that Christianity, more than any other religion, kind of inaugurated this as a focus. Since then, most of the religions have really put love at the center. Even Buddhism, believe it or not. You know, Pure Land Buddhism, have any of you heard of Pure Land Buddhism? It's all love-focused. We hear about Zen, which is not less so, but actually a lot of the Buddhism that's most popular is devotional. You know? And Meher Baba and Buddhism, the critique of the false self. And then, let's see. Meher Baba and the New Humanity. The New Humanity, an integrated darshana for the upcoming age. If some of the God Speaks aficionados here, there probably are some in the room. If you've looked at those charts closely, several of them, two of them have the language and correlations between what is called their Vedanta, Sufism, and I think Christianity it's called. And they'll give the words that correlate between those three traditions. In many cases, it's very non-obvious, you know. And so I think Baba was helping to give us some clues and cues in how these are to be integrated with each other. Well, again, in our Baba world, a lot of people would say, who cares? And I'm not faulting anybody who says that. Not everybody's into that. But when the time comes that the world starts to pay attention and starts to attack our world, you know, a lot of people, you know, this that new atheism that was so big about 15 years ago, a lot of people lost faith in God because there'd be these challenges, say, oh, how can you believe in God when this and when that? And there weren't, well, there have been, but there weren't responses that a lot of these people heard. A lot of these questions can actually be answered. So when that hits us, a lot of people could lose their faith in Baba because we're utterly unprepared for it. So I think it would be desirable for those with an interest in this to start to have some consciousness of, well, how do you answer the problem that Baba says Muhammad was the avatar? How do you answer the question that Jesus is the one and only Son of God when Baba says the avatar? What do we say? How do we actually respond to that? Not everyone will be interested in this, but I feel it's time to bring the topic up a little more. Of course, as Don Stevens is really the one more than anyone else who addressed a lot of these questions. Then this afternoon, the everything and the nothing, or light and darkness. This is primordial metaphysics. That is to say, what exists. And Meher Baba's, I love the word tawhid. It's the Islamic word for the oneness of God. But in Islam, God and creation are separate. But Meher Baba's, I feel that these concepts are very central to Meher Baba's account of how it can be. If God alone is real, then how do you explain this, right? I see everything except God. My experience is that everything but God is real. That's what I actually experience. And what he's saying starkly contradicts. Isn't that true, what we experience? So this is central to his address to that. Now, the second, thinking the imagination and the role of the imagination in Meher Baba's Darshana. This is all from Infinite Intelligence. I brought all these books, by the way, so you can know that it's a sort of light reading. That's if you need exercise. If you've reached the end of a paragraph and feel a little bit bewildered, like Al-Ghazali said, you can sort of do some push-ups. But thinking the imagination, I think it's hugely important, this one idea. And the role of the imagination in Meher Baba's Darshana. Just to anticipate, God Speaks is an account of the soul's journey. What it does not really explain is what the imagination is and what its role is within his Darshana. Baba actually had a focus in God Speaks, but it turns out the imagination is huge, and it means much more than you would think if you haven't read Infinite Intelligence. Okay, Pran, and I'm going to put in a third thing here. You see, we can't even begin to cover these things in depth, so we're just going to be touching on it a little bit. I forgot to put in here the divine theme. That really needs to be in here also. The narrative of the journey of the soul from the creation to the realization of God. Then Pran and Akash as the primordial dichotomy within the imagination. I always tell the story and was delighted when it happened. I was doing a thing at the Sharia bookstore on Pran and Akash. And some of you know Doug Hare. Anyway, he's works in the medical field. So he did a scientific experiment. So, if you want to do some empirical study of this is good precedent. That night he went out to dinner and he ordered prawn and squash. So what we wanted to know was, did they clash? And did they produce subtle gases? So if you want to do an experiment, if you've read Creationist Causes, you'll know what this is referring to. As the primordial dichotomy within the imagination. It turns out that this is the root dichotomy within the world of the imagination. Pran and Akash. And then Meher Baba's two creation narratives. Most Baba lovers would be acquainted with the one you see in God Speaks in Other Places. That is, God asking, who am I? And the journey of the soul following from that. but there actually is another, and it's related to this prana and akash thing. So that's this afternoon, piece of cake, right, to cover all this. Then tomorrow morning, the divine foundations of the cosmic order. That's not metaphysics, but this you might say is Meher Baba's cosmology, right? So first, God's triune nature as knowledge, power, and bliss, and its cosmological consequences. This is a big deal, actually, but it turns out knowledge, power, and bliss are the divine foundation for the tripartite division in the cosmos and in the false self to the mental sphere, subtle sphere, and gross sphere. Those are shadows of God's triune nature as knowledge, power, and bliss. And the three bodies, too, are the shadows of that. All of this is coherent. I do not see anyone else who has explained these things in this way. In fact, I say this, and I'll say it at this moment, that even the trinity of knowledge, power, and bliss, I've been looking for years, and I haven't seen that trinity anywhere else. Those topics individually are dealt with in every great philosophical and religious tradition, but that those are the triune nature of God. And Satchidanand is often put forth as the equivalent, but actually Satchidanand does not mean knowledge, power, and bliss. This seems to be a new contribution of the avatar of the age to our understanding of God. If anybody knows otherwise, please tell me, you know. So that's one major foundation. Then God as the triune actor, creator, preserver, and destroyer. You know, in religious traditions, creator is a big deal, especially in the Abrahamic religions. So Baba has a lot to say. This is in Hinduism. Dattatreya is Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. This is an idea that's all over Hinduism. The three states, wakefulness, dream, and sound sleep. Now, to modern science, these are just physiological conditions produced by the brain. But in Meher Baba's Darshana, they're much more than that. They're foundational to the whole nature of reality even. This again comes right from Vedanta. Those ideas are there. And self and the other, the microcosm and the macrocosm. This is a huge aspect of Meher Baba's Darshana also. Okay, and then tomorrow afternoon, this is on the path to God, how you get there. And the first topic I wanted to bring up was the three great margs. Do you know the word marg? It means path. It literally means path. And this is central to Meher Baba's Darshana, but the Bhagavad Gita is like the master treatise on this subject. The three great paths of Gyan, Karma, and Bhakti. That is the path of knowledge, the path of action, and the path of devotion, which in its higher reaches, parabhakti, becomes love. And this is another connection that Meher Baba made, that those are actually directly related to God's triune nature as knowledge, power, bliss. Knowledge is related to Gyan, or the knowledge path. Power is related to Karma Yoga, which is the path of action. And Anand, power, knowledge, bliss, Anand is the word for bliss, is related to Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion or love. That's a real... Baba has really given an astonishingly coherent account of many of these things, but you have to draw on all this literature for this to make sense. Then the involutionary journey, the planes and the asmans. I'll probably mostly focus on the planes and the asmans. I mean, there's a lot more in God Speaks and Discourses and other places about the 7 planes, and I just hope that, I mean, a lot of you have probably, been through them all and know it from experience, right? Sort of like talk about the 3rd plane, and Irma is saying, it's a little bit hard to remember. That was so long ago. Nonetheless, I feel my part, but probably a good solid voting block of a gross planer. That's me. Those donuts look mighty good. Yeah.
First plane is the shadow of bliss.
That's right. That's right. This is the bliss plane. Yeah. But the planes and the asmans is this. Actually, Baba, a lot of Baba's early material explains this, but the master exposition on this subject is creation and its causes. And we now have this. And then the preeminence of love. Baba clearly did give love preeminence in his path to God. There's no doubt about it. So we could raise the question, what is love anyway? As Sue was asking earlier, And then the role of the master. And this was something that Baba hammered. In Creation and Its Causes, if any of you have read it, this is Baba's talks to the Mir Ashram boys. Almost every talk, and he talked about these unbelievable subjects, amazing subjects, But at the end of all of them, he said, the only thing you can forget about all of this, just remember, create love. And he kept emphasizing, love the master. And Meher Baba was not bashful about saying, love me. He did not hide who he was. That has been at the dead center of Baba's Darshana all along. And I think that's one of the major understandings that most of Baba's lovers have absorbed and understood the importance of that. And that is the most important thing, by far. So this is a picture of what we won't cover, since we can cover about 2% of this. Do you want to bring up anything at this point? I know it's all boring because you know all this already. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you said that Baba chose the word avatar for himself,
Yeah.
can you expound on that?
Well, yeah, like with all of the great avatars, they did select some term to designate their status or their station, you could say. So like Jesus wound up selecting Christ, Muhammad selected Rasul, which means a prophet. It's not God in human form at all. And the Jews would agree with that. There's no possibility of that, but it's a prophet of God. Buddha is the enlightened one. Buddha did not affirm the existence of God at all, so he couldn't be God in human form. So what word was Meher Baba going to use for that? And from early on, you see, this word avatar is well known in the Hindu world, especially the Vaishnavite. That's the stream, the current, the river of those devoted to Vishnu. But in India, everything all gets mushed up with everything else, There isn't a central, hierarchy establishing a dogma common to everybody. But the word avatar is widely known as an incarnation of Vishnu. And we might think of Vishnu as the preserver, but that's only one of its uses. To Vaishnavites, Vishnu is God. He's the totality of the whole thing. The Bhagavad Gita doesn't use the word, but it gives a good explanation of what that is. So Baba and avatar, one of its virtues from Meher Baba's standpoint is that the avatar descends many times, not just once. Of course, that's true of Buddha too, but Buddha doesn't have the idea of God and doesn't have the idea of a self. Denies both of, or does not affirm either one of those. So Baba did take this word, but he immensely clarified it in his own way. Like, I don't know, I don't do these, but computer games, you get an avatar, right? Any of you do that? The token, that's a token for yourself, something like that? Huh?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Me too. We'd have, since we have an assemblage, we could comprise, maybe not all of us, but the Dinosaurs Club. We have some non-dinosaurs often that. So we dinosaurs don't have avatars, but the younger generations would. Or even in Hinduism, there can be an avatar of anything you can imagine. And like one of the avatars is a tortoise, And one of the avatars is a fish, thing. There may be symbolic meanings to all of it, but it's not at all clear. But Baba clarified the meaning of that word enormously. For example, in his Discourse on the Avatar, which actually was the first he had published, or in God Speaks, in many other places. So Baba took that word from Hinduism and adapted it and gave it his own precision and own meaning. So that's the main term we have for who he is, his status, right? Isn't that true? Avatar Meher Baba? Yeah. Now, oh yeah, listen, I realize can't possibly get through all these things, so let's just make it a free-for-all. Yeah, Raphael.
I find myself wanting to, I've just been contemplating the correlation between the knowledge, power, and bliss
Yeah,
and the triune actor.
yeah.
Perhaps you don't want to comment because it's covered tomorrow, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to suss it out where the correlations are. Thinking that creator correlates to power, preserver knowledge, and destroyer bliss.
I think that they don't correlate, and they represent fundamentally different aspects of God. The knowledge, power, bliss are the nature of God, and the triune actor is the activity of God governing that.
Okay, I thought you said there were correlations between those.
I don't. I don't think, not between those two trinities. These are the three really major trinities that I've been able, this is tomorrow morning's topic, that I've been able to identify, and anyone can challenge it, and that is knowledge, power, bliss as God's nature, creator, preserver, destroyer as God's activity, his functioning. That's the third state of God for those of you who know the 10 States of God chapter. And wakefulness, dream, and sound sleep, and those are the three consciousness states that pertain to all creatures within the created universe. If those seem, I keep coming back to those are the three that I can see. Major trinities in Meher Baba's Darshana. No, I think they're addressing different aspects of reality, actually. It seems like to me. But you guys can, I give you permission to have your own views. I hope no one will abuse it to such an extent as to disagree. Yeah, no, these are great questions, actually. Well, what I'm saying is these are the three that I keep finding. Well, but this is just my understanding, and people, it's just we haven't had many people studying this. And those are God's triune nature, that's Baba's word for it, as knowledge, power, and bliss, which is the foundation for the three spheres, the three bodies, mental, subtle, and gross, and the three great paths. Now there's a powerful idea, right? Isn't that? I mean, think all of those made coherent to each other. And then I'm activating this word, the triune actor. That would be the third state of God, if you know God speaks, or Ishwar, if you know infinite intelligence. That is creator, preserver, destroyer. And according to my understanding, we probably won't have time to get this properly, but actually, Ishwar does everything, and all we do is watch. The Atma actually does nothing. That's my understanding of this. Did you ever see that movie Being There with Peter Sellers? And he says, I like to watch. So that's what, the Atma is kind of like a Peter Sellers. It just watches. And then the third is wakefulness, dream, sound, sleep. And those are the states that find expression throughout the entire domain of the created universe. Is there another, I'm not saying there are three trinities, I don't know, but if anybody has another, but I keep finding these as foundational to me. There's another really big one, and that's microcosm, macrocosm. That's huge also. Yeah, that will be related to the everything and the nothing.
I would think to expansion and contraction.
Yeah. I keep thinking about those as experiences on the path, but we'd have to think about that. You know, there's a wonderful Sufi treatise, When the Time Comes. I think Baba lovers, if they get to the point of being interested in this, could use this. It's by a Sufi, 11th century Sufi named Kushairi, and it's about 30 pages. I have it on my computer, actually. It's not very long, but it goes through a lot of the basic Sufi terminology for experiences on the path to God. And it's not like the planes of consciousness, where in the third plane of consciousness you can use your powers this way and that. It's not like that. It's like experiences you have. Fana, baka, annihilation and abiding in. And this guy is something. I don't know who this guy was, but man, these are, he'll do a one-page thing on expansion and contraction, and you could spend 5 meetings on it. It's so deep, actually. So we in our Baba world don't really have much of a language for talking about these things, really. But I think this is a place where, when the time comes, Sufism, this is the main place where I think Sufism could help us. This kind of Sufism, yeah. Kushairi, Q-U-S-H-A-I-R-I, Kushairi. You could probably get it on your phone in a second. He's very famous. This man, I'd like to know more about him. I wonder if he had a perfect master or something to write what he wrote. Ooh. You could spend an hour on one paragraph because it's so deep, actually.
What century is he?
Huh?
What century is
He was 11th century. There's another one, I think Seven knows about, Hujwiri. He also wrote a treatise that covers there are a bunch of, this was the century where you had some of the great early treatises on Sufism. And Sufism tended to concentrate not on philosophy or metaphysics, but on problems and experiences that confront seekers of God in their journey to God. They really didn't give a damn about philosophy. Then they got people who did, like Ibn Arabi, the perfect master. But early on, it was really about, we want to get closer to God. What are you experiencing when you try to do this? And they came up with a whole language of it. It's quite wonderful. Baba loved Sufism, and I can see why. And the language they used would be useful to us, I think. It's not weird. Of course, I'm only dealing with English, so my Arabic is still doubtful. Somewhere between negligible and non-existent. On that cusp, yeah. Okay, well, a little bit about Meher Baba's words. This is a whole major. I have a whole presentation about this book, Tiffin Lectures, and I think when people want to study this subject, this is that is to say, not concerned with understanding what Baba's saying, but study the problem of Baba's words. This is the best book for that. And here's the reason, that we have multiple sources for it. And we can really see Baba's discourses in formation. That is, we have sometimes like 3 layers in the diaries of Chanji. Do you know Chanji? Framrose Dada Chanji, one of Baba's early disciples, his secretary until he died in 1944. Was it 44? The memorial tower is right on the site of his and Masaji's, where their graves were. Anyway, Chanji was the great diarist. And sometimes for some of these Tiffin lectures, you'll have 3, 2, 3, 1, 4 different layers of diary. The first one, this would be an extreme case, but you'd have a scattering of words written in Gujarati, right? And without further stuff, you wouldn't have the slightest idea what to make of it. But then